Men, have you ever met a woman who seemed genuinely interested in you? She replied to your messages, laughed at your jokes, spent time with you, and gave you every reason to believe that something meaningful was developing between the two of you. You start imagining possibilities. You begin investing your time, your attention, and your emotions. Then, without warning, everything changes. Suddenly, she tells you she already has a boyfriend. Or she says she's not ready for a relationship. Or perhaps she simply becomes distant and unavailable, and you're left sitting there wondering what happened. If that experience sounds familiar, stay with me until the end of this video, because today we're going to uncover a powerful truth about attraction, female psychology, and the reasons certain men seem impossible for women to forget. More importantly, you'll learn 7 psychological triggers that naturally make a woman think about you, miss you, and remember you long after you've left the room. Now, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, because on this channel we talk about Stoicism, female psychology, attraction, relationships, and the truth most people are afraid to say out loud. The first thing you need to understand is that attraction is rarely logical. Many men assume that if they are kind, available, attentive, and interested, attraction should naturally follow. But human psychology doesn't always work that way. In fact, one of the reasons emotionally unavailable people create such strong emotional reactions is because uncertainty can be incredibly powerful. When someone gives you just enough attention to keep your hope alive, but never enough certainty to make you feel secure, your mind starts filling in the gaps. And that is where many men unknowingly become emotionally attached. Before we talk about the 7 triggers, we need to understand why uncertainty itself can be so addictive. One of the biggest mistakes men make is believing they become attached because a woman is extraordinary. While that can sometimes be true, psychology tells us that attachment is often fueled by something else entirely: uncertainty. Human beings are naturally drawn toward things they cannot fully understand, predict, or possess. The more unpredictable something becomes, the more attention the mind gives it. Think about the women who have occupied the most space in your thoughts. Were they always the ones who showed the strongest interest? Usually not. More often, they were the ones who left you guessing. One day, they seemed excited to talk to you. The next day, they became distant. One moment, they acted as though they enjoyed your company, and the next, they seemed emotionally unavailable. This inconsistency creates a powerful psychological loop. When the brain receives consistent rewards, it quickly adapts. But when rewards become unpredictable, attention actually increases. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as intermittent reinforcement. It's the same reason people repeatedly check their phones, refresh social media feeds, or become attached to situations that offer occasional emotional highs mixed with uncertainty. The possibility of a positive outcome keeps the mind engaged. This is why so many men become emotionally invested in women who send mixed signals. They're not always responding to the woman herself. They're responding to the uncertainty she creates. Their imagination begins doing more work than reality. They start thinking about what could happen rather than what is happening. The lesson here is important. If you want a woman to think about you, miss you, and remember you, the answer is not to create confusion or play games. The answer is to understand that attraction grows when there is space for curiosity. And that brings us to the first psychological trigger that many men completely misunderstand: being too available. The first psychological trigger is surprisingly simple, yet it is something many men struggle with. Do not be overly available. This does not mean ignoring women, pretending to be busy, or playing childish games. It means having a life that does not revolve around one person's attention. Many men make the mistake of believing that being constantly available proves interest. The moment she texts, they respond. The moment she calls, they answer. Their schedule adjusts to hers. Their priorities shift around her availability. At first, this may seem like kindness or dedication, but over time, it can create an unintended message. It suggests that your life is waiting for her to happen. Healthy attraction requires balance. Think about the people you respect most. Chances are they have responsibilities, goals, interests, and commitments that demand their attention. They are not available every second of every day because their lives are already full. Ironically, that fullness often makes them more attractive, not less. When a woman realizes that your time is valuable, she begins viewing it differently. Instead of assuming you'll always be there whenever she wants attention, she becomes more aware of your presence when you are there. Absence has a way of creating appreciation that constant availability rarely achieves. This is where many men get confused. They hear advice like this and immediately think the goal is to create distance. It isn't. The goal is to create balance. There is a huge difference between being unavailable and having a meaningful life. A man with purpose does not need to manufacture mystery. Mystery naturally exists because he is genuinely occupied with things that matter to him. He has goals to pursue, friendships to maintain, experiences to enjoy, and responsibilities to handle. And that leads directly to the second trigger, because the fastest way to become more memorable is not by thinking more about her, it is by building a life that gives her something interesting to think about when you're not around. The second psychological trigger is one that has nothing to do with texting strategies, clever lines, or trying to impress women. It is having an interesting life of your own. This is where many men unknowingly get things backwards. They believe attraction should become the center of their lives, when in reality, attraction often grows when it becomes a byproduct of a life that is already meaningful. Think about the men who naturally command respect. They are not sitting around waiting for someone's message to appear on their phone. They are building businesses, pursuing goals, developing skills, improving their health, traveling, learning, creating, and challenging themselves. They have a direction. They have momentum. And most importantly, they have a purpose that exists independently of any romantic interest. Women notice this, not because they are impressed by every achievement, but because purpose changes the way a man carries himself. A man with goals tends to be more confident, more grounded, and less emotionally dependent on any single person. His happiness is not tied to whether one woman replies to a message. His life continues moving forward regardless. This creates something incredibly attractive: emotional stability. When a woman spends time with a man who is passionate about his life, she often finds herself thinking about him long after the interaction ends. His stories are interesting. His experiences are memorable. His energy feels different because he is engaged with the world rather than waiting for validation from it. One of the biggest mistakes men make is trying to become more interesting by talking more. The truth is that people become interesting by living more. Experiences create stories, challenges create confidence, growth creates depth. And when your life becomes genuinely fulfilling, something remarkable happens. You stop obsessing over whether someone is thinking about you. Ironically, that's often when people start thinking about you more. Which brings us to another mistake that quietly destroys attraction, giving away too much attention too easily. The third psychological trigger involves something that quietly destroys attraction more often than most men realize: the attention trap. This happens when a woman becomes completely certain that no matter what she does, you'll always be there waiting. Your attention becomes predictable. Your investment becomes guaranteed. And while consistency is important in healthy relationships, taking someone's attention for granted is something entirely different. Human nature has an interesting tendency. People often place a higher value on things they believe they could lose. This doesn't mean you should threaten to leave, play games, or create artificial distance. It simply means you should never build your entire world around one person's presence. Many men fall into this trap because they believe that giving unlimited attention proves commitment. They become the first person to text, the first person to call, and the first person to check in every single time. Over time, the woman stops wondering about them because there is nothing left to wonder about. She already knows exactly where they stand, exactly how much attention she'll receive, and exactly how available they'll be. The problem isn't kindness. The problem is predictability without balance. A woman is more likely to think about you when she knows your attention is genuine, but not guaranteed. She appreciates your presence because she understands that your life does not revolve around providing it. You have other priorities, other responsibilities, and other people who matter to you. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe if you're enjoying this video. My goal is to help men understand attraction and female psychology in a way that encourages confidence, self-respect, and emotional growth. The most attractive men are not the ones constantly seeking attention. They are the ones whose attention has value because it comes from choice, not need. And that distinction becomes even more important when a woman reaches out to you, because how you respond in those moments can either increase attraction or quietly weaken it. The fourth psychological trigger is one that many men accidentally sabotage without realizing it. When a woman reaches out to them, they become overly excited. They immediately drop what they're doing, respond with excessive enthusiasm, and suddenly shift all of their attention toward her. While this reaction may feel natural, it often communicates something very different from what they intend. Attraction is strongly connected to emotional stability. When a woman contacts you, she should feel that she's entering a life that is already full and meaningful, not becoming the center of a life that was waiting for her arrival. This doesn't mean acting cold, pretending not to care, or playing hard to get. It simply means remaining grounded. A confident man can be happy to hear from a woman without treating the interaction as the highlight of his entire week. Think about it from her perspective. If every message she sends creates an exaggerated reaction, she begins to feel the weight of your expectations. Instead of enjoying the conversation, she becomes aware that your emotional state may be tied to her attention. That pressure can quietly reduce attraction because it shifts the dynamic from connection to responsibility. The most memorable men don't react from scarcity. They react from abundance. They enjoy the conversation, but they don't lose themselves in it. They remain calm, present, and emotionally balanced. Their mood doesn't rise and fall based on whether a woman texts them back in 5 minutes or 5 hours. This calmness creates a powerful impression because it signals confidence. It tells her that while you enjoy her company, your happiness doesn't depend on it. And once a woman begins seeing you as a man who values himself, another interesting psychological shift can occur. She starts realizing that she may not be the only person who appreciates your presence. And that brings us to the next trigger, one that many men misunderstand completely. The fifth psychological trigger is something many men misunderstand because they immediately associate it with jealousy or manipulation. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're really discussing is exclusivity. More specifically, the mistake of acting as though one woman is the only person in the world who matters. When a man places all of his attention, focus, and emotional investment on one woman too early, he often creates an imbalance. Without realizing it, he begins communicating that she has already secured a position in his life that she hasn't actually earned yet. Everything becomes centered around her. His plans revolve around her availability. His mood revolves around her attention. His focus revolves around her reactions. That level of exclusivity can quietly reduce attraction because it removes a sense of challenge and discovery. Human beings naturally value things that other people value. This principle appears everywhere in life. We pay more attention to opportunities that seem desirable to others. We become more curious about things that appear scarce or appreciated. The same principle can influence attraction. When a woman sees that other people enjoy your company, respect your presence, and value your time, it changes the way she perceives you. She begins viewing you through a different lens. Suddenly, you're not simply a man pursuing her. You're a man who is appreciated by the people around him. Notice that this has nothing to do with showing off or trying to make anyone jealous. In fact, the most effective version of this happens naturally. You have female friends. You have a social life. You have people who enjoy being around you. Your value becomes visible without you needing to announce it. What often impacts attraction isn't reality itself. It's what reality causes someone to imagine. And when a woman realizes that other people enjoy your presence, she may begin paying closer attention to what makes you different. Which leads us to another surprisingly powerful trigger, one rooted in memory, emotion, and association. The sixth psychological trigger may seem simple on the surface, but it is rooted in something surprisingly powerful, emotional association. Human beings remember experiences far more than facts. We may forget exact conversations, but we rarely forget how someone made us feel. This is why a meaningful nickname can leave a lasting impression long after a conversation has ended. Now, this is not about using generic pet names or calling every woman by the same nickname. In fact, doing that usually has the opposite effect because it feels impersonal. The real power comes from creating a nickname that is connected to a shared experience, an inside joke, a memorable moment, or something unique about the connection you share. The human brain naturally creates associations between emotions and memories. When a certain word, phrase, or nickname becomes linked to a positive experience, hearing it later can instantly bring those feelings back to the surface. It's similar to how a particular song can remind you of a specific period in your life. The song itself isn't magical. It simply becomes attached to a meaningful memory. The same thing can happen in relationships. When a woman hears a nickname that only you use, it often activates memories connected to your conversations, your experiences together, and the emotions she felt in those moments. Suddenly, you're not just another contact in her phone. You're connected to a collection of experiences that feel personal and unique. What makes this especially powerful is that it creates familiarity. Familiarity builds comfort. Comfort builds emotional connection. And emotional connection is often what separates a forgettable interaction from a memorable one. The most effective nicknames are never forced. They emerge naturally from genuine interactions and shared experiences. When that happens, they become more than just words. They become emotional shortcuts to memories. And speaking of memorable experiences, there is another way to leave a lasting impression on a woman's mind. One that creates not only familiarity, but also respect. It comes from giving her something valuable that she can carry with her long after the conversation ends. The seventh psychological trigger has very little to do with attraction tactics and everything to do with human psychology. People naturally remember those who add value to their lives. One of the most effective ways to become memorable is to teach someone something useful, meaningful, or insightful that they didn't know before. Think about the people who have left the strongest impressions on your life. Chances are they weren't just entertaining. They weren't just attractive. They helped you see something differently. They taught you a skill, offered a valuable perspective, or shared knowledge that improved your life in some way. That experience created respect, and respect is one of the strongest foundations of lasting attraction. This is where many men make a mistake. They assume attraction is built entirely through compliments, attention, and emotional connection. While those things matter, admiration often grows when a woman sees that you possess knowledge, experience, or wisdom that she values. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to be a professor or an expert. It could be teaching her a practical skill, sharing a lesson you've learned from life, offering a new perspective on a challenge she's facing, or introducing her to something she finds genuinely useful. What matters is the impact. When someone learns something valuable from you, that knowledge doesn't disappear when the conversation ends. It remains with them. And every time they use it, remember it, or benefit from it, there's a good chance they'll think about the person who taught it to them. This creates something deeper than attraction. It creates respect. And respect has a unique quality. Unlike physical attraction, which can fade quickly, respect tends to grow over time. It becomes connected to your character, your competence, and your ability to contribute something meaningful to another person's life. Which brings us to the most important lesson of all. Because despite everything we've discussed, the real goal should never be making someone miss you. The real goal is becoming a man who naturally leaves a lasting impression wherever he goes. As we come to the end of this discussion, it's important to understand something that many men completely miss. The real goal is not learning clever ways to make a woman miss you. The real goal is becoming the kind of man who naturally leaves an impression wherever he goes. There is a massive difference between the two. A man who is obsessed with making someone miss him is still focused on controlling another person's emotions. He's still measuring his value through someone else's attention. He's still waiting for validation to confirm that he's important. But a man who is focused on building himself operates from a completely different mindset. He develops confidence because he has goals. He develops self-respect because he keeps promises to himself. He develops purpose because his life is moving in a meaningful direction. And as a result, people naturally become drawn to him. Think about the 7 triggers we've discussed. None of them are really about manipulation. They are about becoming more balanced, more confident, and more interesting. Having your own life, protecting your time, remaining emotionally grounded, building genuine connections, creating memorable experiences, sharing value. These are qualities that improve every area of your life, not just your relationships. Ironically, when you stop obsessing over whether a woman misses you, you often become the man she thinks about the most. Not because you played games, but because you created an experience that was difficult to forget. You showed her confidence without arrogance, strength without neediness, interest without desperation. If you watched all the way to the end, comment "self-respect first" below, so I know who stayed with me until the finish. And tell me this, which of the 7 triggers do you think has the biggest impact on attraction? If you found value in this video, subscribe for more insights into Stoicism, female psychology, and modern relationships. Until next time, focus on becoming a man worth remembering, and the rest often takes care of itself. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, "No great thing is created suddenly." This applies to attraction as well. It is not built through tricks or games, but through the slow, steady cultivation of a life worth remembering. When you become that man, you won't need to wonder if she's thinking about you. You'll know that you've left an impression that time cannot erase. And that is the truest form of attraction. Not the kind that fades, but the kind that lingers, the kind that echoes, the kind that makes her remember you long after you've gone. Be that man, build that life, and watch how everything changes.